Greetings, WHAP Warriors. Brad Anderson here, and this is the next segment of the Atlantic Revolutions. And of course, this would be a much larger slideshow and stories, but I'm truncating it for obvious reasons and boiling it down to the big ideas for you. So please make sure to write down in your notes that which is bold. Anything not in bold is just extra details for you. You can, of course, stop this as needed and rewatch for the main points. Talking about Napoleon. Napoleon rose to power and rose through the ranks as a Corsican artillery commander in the French army during the French Revolution. Corsica is a small island off the coast of Italy and France. They actually speak Corsican. He had a thick Corsican accent, which made him stand out and drew the ire of some of his fellow French soldiers. But nonetheless, Napoleon Bonaparte was a capable artillery commander, quickly rising through the ranks. In 1799, after France had endured basically a full decade of upheaval and changes in leadership, Napoleon and a few of his military buddies are going to stage a coup d'etat in 1799. Later on, he is declared dictator for life, then emperor of a new French empire, which he attempts to establish over much of continental Europe. He's going to establish the Napoleonic Code, which is a reversal in many ways of some of the freedoms that had been granted during the French Revolution. Equal rights for male citizens, a reintroduction of slavery, and lessening the rights of women. He's also going to institute the Continental System, which was a blockade of Britain's economy, and it paralyzed the commerce, input, and output of the British industry. There's also going to be a waging of wars as Napoleon seeks to establish this continental French Empire. The Napoleonic Wars was the resistance to this attempt, 1803, 1815. It's going to be a coalition of forces that include the British all across Europe, shifting alliances in an attempt to resist the growth of this French Empire under Napoleon's rule. Napoleon, however, is going to make a costly error, one that has come down to us from the ages. And this error is the French coalition forces, after having won a series of large, fierce battles, for instance, the greatest of which is at Austerlitz, he is going to invade Russia, which is a classic mistake. So promise me this: if any of you ever end up a warlord or military commander in Europe, never invade Russia in the winter. This is a huge mistake, and it's going to be three things that are going to stymie Napoleon's efforts. First of all, scorched earth policy. As the French army makes their way into Russia, trying to take Moscow, as they go farther and farther, their supply lines get thinner and thinner, and they come to rely on the Russian countryside for supplies. The Russians are going to burn their crops, kill their livestock, and essentially leave nothing behind that the French could use. There's also going to be the element of King Winter, as the Russians call it. The Russian winter was incredibly bleak and incredibly cold, and the snow and the mud and the freezing rain and all of that is going to obviously slow the efforts of the French to march in and then march out. Then, of course, you have mud. Mud is a great equalizer all throughout history. I've ran many Spartan races, which are an obstacle course race. I've ran them from Vermont to Ohio to Illinois, and one thing I can tell you is that the common element that is a demoralizing factor is mud. When you're losing your shoe in that goopy, gravy-like mud, when you're getting stuck, your wheels are getting stuck in it, and the mud covers your rifle, or it covers your clothes, and it sticks to it. And it's just a demoralizing factor. And so literally getting stuck in the mud was a serious issue and problem for the French army. So scorched earth policy, King Winter, and mud being factors in this great mistake on Napoleon's part 380,000 French soldiers would die in his effort to take Russia and invade Russia. 100,000 would be captured, and 27,000 would survive and barely crawl out of Russia. And as the story goes, as they were just about to cross the river back into Polish-controlled territory, the French soldiers, so demoralized and so cold and weak and bedraggled, were sitting around their campfires when Napoleon and officers of the French military had ordered a pontoon or raft bridge across the river back into friendly territory. The French soldiers sitting around their fires didn't want to leave, and as the Russian army is literally, over the next hill coming to attack the French forces, they had to basically, throw water on the fires to get these guys to move across the river. And as the story goes, there's guys that are cramming across this bridge and swimming across the river in order to get away from the Russian soldiers. I mean, the French army basically limps out of Russia alive, and Napoleon is going to suffer as well. He's going to be exiled at the island of Elba after the capture of Paris. He's going to return soon after a time in exile in the Mediterranean. He's going to return, but he's going to lose his final battle at Waterloo. And I'm again, papering over a lot of the details in order to give you the big ideas. But the term Waterloo is a term often used in politics or in sports as something that means a final loss, a final defeat, a final battle from which you never come back. Napoleon is exiled at the island of St. Helena, and he dies there, far away from anything in any matters in Europe, as Europe sought to rebuild in the wake of the Napoleonic Wars and the French Empire that had been crafted by Napoleon. But he certainly left an indelible mark on Europe. Now on to the Haitian Revolution, and again, these are the big ideas. That slaves were 90% of the population of Haiti, which had been a sugar colony of the French. You had the Grands Blancs, the landowning whites. Please again forgive my French accent and my French. Petit Blancs, which were the white artisans, and the gens de couleur, the people of color who were in slavery, which comprised most of the population. The 1794 slave revolt was led by Toussaint L'Ouverture, this gentleman here, who is going to help, along with the help of his military, freeing the slaves of Haiti and establishing the first, essentially modern, at that time, successful slave revolt. Incidentally, America, a young nation itself, which had freed itself from colonial rule, chose not to support the Haitians and instead embargo, because one, it had formerly been French, which was an ally during the Revolutionary War, and the fact that it was a slave revolt, and they didn't want to encourage or show any support for a potential slave uprising. The revolution in South America was far-reaching and widespread, and essentially you had hacendados, who were the planter elite in Latin America, which was comprised of the Peninsulares, some who, those that were born in Spain and Portugal. And then, of course, you had the Creoles, who were born in the Americas, and the Mestizos, who were of mixed European and Native American background. All wanted more economic freedom from Spain, from the Spanish Empire. They were landowners. They were far away from Spain. Spain was a not dwindling, I guess you could say that, but it was an empire that was losing its luster, so to speak, during this time period. 1808, Napoleon had conquered Spain, and so in 1810, the Venezuelan hacendados are going to see this as an opening to rebel. And their leader, of course, Simón Bolivar, gentleman pictured here, is going to lead this large-scale revolution in Latin America, in South America, seeking to end taxes on food and abolishing slavery as a result. In 1819, Venezuela is going to be permanently independent. However, whites such as the Creoles are going to remain in power. Now, the question remains, which revolution produced the most liberty and equality? You will discuss this question in class, and each of you will represent one of the 4 Atlantic revolutions. You must be prepared to represent one of these. So we'll talk more about that in class. That is your slideshow and story. Again, it's not a Pixar level production, but nonetheless, you get the idea. It's the big ideas. Make sure you get this into your notes. You write down the bold. I'll be checking those in class. Hope you have a great day. And it's Inauguration Day, folks, so if you're at home, I encourage you to watch history. If you are at school, we'll be watching clips and pieces in class. Have a great day, everybody.